All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're back for another episode of Breaking Down the Long Game, and we are joined today by Treyton DeVore. Thanks for joining me today, man. How you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, of course. So, to give a little bit of an introduction to Treyton, he is a financial advisor out of Kansas City. Young guy, new to the business, similar to me, but super great guy. I thought it'd be helpful to bring him in on and talk about this week's blog post, which is kind of how to manage money. So, what we're going to talk about today is a little bit of the problems that we've seen other people have when they manage money, as well as what we do and how we found it successful with helping our clients manage their money. So, this isn't going to go into too much detail necessarily about investing, but it's literally like how you manage your money from the time it hits your checking account to the end of the month. Okay. So, Trey, talk to us a little bit about some problems that you have seen. I'd say more so millennials make when handling their finances.
So one of the biggest problems I see is people not having like a specific goal that they're aiming for with their money, which I mean that allows for overspending and everything like that because you don't know exactly where to send that money, where to put it. So it's easy to, I mean, just see one thing at a store, buy that, or just spending money in places where it doesn't need to be spent. And without having goals, like that allows for overspending to happen a lot easier. And once you know kind of what your goals are with your money, that allows you to focus your money in those areas. It just allows you to prioritize where you spend your money a lot better.
Mm-hmm. And I think a good way to handle that is, kind of having micro actions. So what a lot of people don't do is they don't see that as something to plan for. So they might know, hey, 3 years from now, I'm going to buy a house, but they haven't broken that down into how much do I need to save every month to hit the 20% down payment or whatever that they're planning on doing. And so when you don't see that, then you just think like, oh, hopefully in that amount of time through bonuses or a few other things, I'll get there. And then you go to Target a couple times a week and you end up buying all of these random things that you don't necessarily need. And then 3 years later, you realize, man, I wasn't even close to saving the amount I needed to, when you probably could have cut a couple $100s out of your target budget for things that you didn't necessarily need to get you there. But
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I want to talk about, so in the blog, we break down this infographic that shows step by step how most people manage their money. So what happens for a lot of people that haven't really started to learn how to budget is they do it in a regular way. So they say like income comes into your checking account and then you pay for your needs and then you probably pay for your wants. So maybe like going out with friends, maybe sporting events, maybe vacation, whatever it may be. And then typically whatever's left over at the end of the month is what they save. But time and time again, what we see is that by doing this, people don't end up saving because they just see that money in their checking account and they go buy whatever they think that they need that month. And then this month, just like last month, you end up with maybe $100 or $50. And yeah, that could be good to save. But what we've come to realize is that if you prioritize it in a different way, that's when you actually create savings. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, exactly. And it kind of just removes the human error from it because like you said, if you have $1,000 in your checking account after you paid for your needs and bills and everything like that, it's easy to just look at that and see like, oh, I have $1,000 to go spend on whatever I want this month. And automating it, like the blog post talks about, that it removes the human error from it. And it's pretty much guilt-free spending if you've automated like sending money directly to your savings account as a part of like your bills and everything. Then if once you know you have your savings and investing taken care of, the money that you have left over, that can be spent on your wants, and you could spend all that if you've established like what needs to be saved and what needs to be invested and everything like that. And kind of like you touched on, almost just reverse engineering your goals. Like, for example, if you know you want to save or want to buy a house when you're 30 or 35, whatever it is, you can look at how much would this down payment be, like what kind of house am I even looking for, and then seeing how much time it's going to take to get there, how much you need to save each year, And you can break that down even more. How much do I need to save each month to make sure I have this down payment when I want to buy this house? And automating pretty much will make that happen, because you know exactly how much needs to be saved, and it'll do it automatically for you.
And sometimes when we talk about automation and human error, I hear people say that, like, well, I think I'm pretty good at this. Like, I can handle it myself. And, for some rare amount of people, that's true. Like, I personally believe I'm really good at handling my finances. I know that I save what I'm supposed to save. I know that I don't overspend, but I still automate it every single month, because what happens if something really important comes up this month and finances are not important? It's not that you would like never miss it if you did it yourself. Well, I mean, really the point is you'd probably miss it 1 or 2 times a year if you did it yourself. So why not take the human behavior out of it and just make sure it's perfect every time?
Mm-hmm.
Which kind of leads into how the next infographic is. So the next infographic shows that, like, there's basically step 1A, step 1B, and step 1C, which is basically like money comes into your checking account and then you have a place for it to go. So it's going to go to your savings. It's going to go to your investing. It's going to go to pay for your needs. And then what's left over in your checking account at the end of the month is what you spend. And it's what you should spend guilt free. And when I say that, a lot of people are like, well, how am I supposed to spend guilt free? And it's like, well, if you've already covered everything else that you need, if you already know you're on track for your house, if you already know you're on track for your retirement, maybe you're paying for your kids' education, whatever it may be, then why would you not just be able to spend the money that's left over at the end of the month every time guilt-free?
Mm-hmm.
And, if you don't, sure, you can add that to your savings and start building upon that for your future. But this strategy kind of allows you to make sure that everything's taken care of first. And then whatever you want to do with the leftover money is what you get to do. But what I think is important here is that when you try to figure out how do I spend the rest of my money on my wants, figure out the things that you truly value. So if you're not a car person, you don't really care about it, don't go spend a bunch of money on a monthly car payment just because you can, when you could figure out, maybe I'm a vacation person and I could allocate that money to having 2 or 3 great vacations a year.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And that's the guilt-free spending is kind of where money becomes fun, because you're taken care of in all the important places. Like, you're putting that certain amount towards your savings goals, towards retirement, towards your emergency fund, all that. And once those are taken care of, that's really about it. Like, on the money side, like the saving and everything, and whatever's left over, that's what you can enjoy yourself with. And like you said, that's why it's important to have those goals, like find your purpose in what you want to do, because everything that's left over after the fact can be put towards those things that you really do enjoy. And I think that's what, like, a lot of people think that financial freedom is having an unlimited amount of money to do all this certain stuff, but that amount of money can be cut down so much if you know what you truly enjoy and what you want to spend your money on. It doesn't need to be $10,000-$20,000 a month. Like, it could be just a couple hundred if you enjoy going to wineries or something like that. You could do that every weekend if all your other goals are taken care of and you know what makes you happy financially. It becomes a lot easier.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. It really all comes down to figuring out what's important to you and what actually makes you happy. I know we always say that money doesn't make you happy, but money can help you do the things that ultimately do make you happy. One other thing I want to point out is that what it shows in the infographic is that when money comes into the checking account, it automatically goes out to a separate account for your savings. One thing that I find with a lot of people is that they integrate their savings in their checking. And so, yes, they might see the number go up, and so that makes them feel good. But at the end of the day, like, when you see larger balances in your checking account, you are always going to be more willing to spend the money, versus like how I actually manage my money is my checking account is literally a landing spot to pay for my bills and my wants, pay off the credit card, those type of things. But the reason why that works super well is because at the end of the month, I basically get down to $100 balance. And so I know I just can't go below 100, because if I do, then, I'm going to be below the amount I need and I'm going to get charged for it. But if you leave $10,000 inside of your checking account and, you're walking around Best Buy and you're like, oh man, the new Apple Watch is only $300. Like, I do have $10,000 in my checking. You're going
It's
to
not
pay
going to
for
make
it,
that
even though
big of
you
a
know
dent.
that. Yeah, even though you know that's your emergency account, you're still probably going to do it. But by splitting the two, you walk through Best Buy and you see that watch and you're like, got $150 left in here. Do I fill it into next month's wants, or do I transfer the money from my savings, wait for it to get there for 2 days? And for me and for most people that I've worked with and seen, that actually helps them because they're probably not going to go home, transfer the money over, wait 2 days, and then go buy that Apple Watch. And if they do, it's probably something that they really valued, and they probably could have waited to the next month. So I think that's another way to keep us accountable. For you, how do you personally handle your finances? Do you kind of pay yourself first and take that method? Do you have like a hybrid structure? What do you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, I never really knew what paying yourself first meant. Like, I thought,
You just
like,
heard
coming out
it.
of college and everything, yeah, like I heard my grandpa talk about it. I heard my parents talk about it and everything. And I never really truly understood what it meant. Like, I thought when you get paid from your job, like, that's paying yourself first, like you're getting paid and everything. And that just really wasn't the case. So what I do personally is when I get paid, I have, I mean, like most banking apps have it nowadays where you can set up automatic transfers.
Mhm.
So I'll just have a set amount, whatever, if it's a couple hundred, maybe it's $1,000, just have that money automatically transferred on payday. Like most companies pay on the second Friday, or maybe it's the 15th of every month, the 30th of every month. So if you know that money is coming in on that day, like you can just set up an automatic transfer and it's just going to go straight to your savings. And having that differential between the checking and savings is huge. And I do the same thing that you do. Like I don't keep a lot of money in my checking account. Like it's, I mean, towards the end of the month, it is like maybe a $50, $100 balance because that's just spending money. That's not my savings. That's not my investments or anything. And I mean, that's one of the easiest things is just knowing, having that separation of spending money and money towards your savings and investments and goals and everything, because it's so easy to have like 10,000, like you said, in a checking. It's like, oh, if I go buy this, that's not on this
Mhm.
scale. It's not that much money. But once you separate, it's like, okay, now I have this much to spend after I've already been taken care of. And it just makes everything spending so much easier. It gives you that peace of mind. Like I'm taken care of. I can spend this money now.
No, that's a really great point. The out of sight, out of mind philosophy, and a lot of people hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's kind of hard." But you do it. Most people do it with their 401k. They do it with other things through their employer, where you just don't even see it. So if you create that same philosophy with your budget, where hey, understanding I get paid on every 2 weeks, or I get paid once a month, or I get paid every week, and you know how much you need to save every month, set it up so if it's twice a month that you get paid and you're supposed to save $800, you do 400 on the Friday of every paycheck, and then you don't even think about it. It's not really money that you're necessarily missing. And the important thing is the earlier you can do this, the better. If you can start this right out
Mm-hmm.
of college or your first job, you're going to be really successful in it because you never thought that you had that money. It's definitely a little bit harder to integrate the farther you are into your job, but no matter
Mm-hmm.
where you are at your stage of life, to integrate this out of sight, out of mind philosophy typically ends up working for most people, even if you have to adjust to it for a few months.
Yeah. And another example would be just like, I mean, everyone has subscription services now, whether it's Netflix or Hulu or Spotify, Amazon Prime, those are all being automatically taken out of your account every month. And the companies do that because, I mean, it pretty much guarantees payment and it's just easy. Like you said, out of sight, out of mind. If you do the exact same thing with your savings, you're you're just guaranteeing that you're going to save that amount because it's automatically happening. You're not even thinking about it, just like you don't think about paying for Netflix next month if it's on an automatic subscription. It just happens. It's there for you. And I mean, you can treat your savings the exact same way.
Exactly. So to summarize, I would say first things most important is figure out how to pay yourself first. I think what you can learn is the longer that you do this, the more of the understanding that you have. So you start to figure out my expenses are pretty similar. I get paid this much. Here's what's left over. And instead of kind of waiting till later in the month to figure out what you have, you can get understanding of typically I have 1,000 or 1,500 or whatever dollars it might be to spend, and you can get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
Two would be automate as much as you can. I mean, technology has been created to make our lives easier. let's take the human behavior out of it and make life as easy for ourselves as we can and make sure that we don't make mistakes and overspend. Also, try to separate your savings and your checking as just another way to reinforce good spending. And then lastly is kind of just figure out the method that works the best for you. Just because we say this works the best and it works the best for us and a lot of the people that we work with doesn't necessarily mean it works the best for you and your family. So sometimes we see that there's like a couple and they don't decide to integrate their finances, and that's okay. But maybe figure out a system where both of your dollars come into a set checking account that pays for all of your family expenses, and then separate the money that comes out for your each individual spending. I know that's something that a lot of our clients do and we've seen it work, but really don't just take one method and just stick with it if you know it's not working for you. Go and try to figure out, the best structure that fits you and your family and your goals. Anything else you'd want to add before we wrap up?
Just to kind of add on to that, like it's not going to be perfect the very first time you do it, and people might get discouraged. Like if it's not working, it's easy just to quit and go back to the old ways. But you just have to remember it's not going to be perfect the very first time you do it. Like maybe you saved a little too much, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but maybe you need just a little bit more for spending. Like you can always adjust it, and just seeing what works best for you is one of the biggest things. And it's easy to get started with.
Mm-hmm. Well, Treyton, thanks for joining me today. For everybody that's watching, we're going to link to all of Treyton's social media. He's another young financial advisor putting out a ton of great content. So it'd be a great person to follow. So again, thanks for joining me today, man. I think it was very good use of our time. I'm excited to make more of these with you in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
And
I
let everybody know,
that.
link, share, subscribe, and we'll see you back next time. Thank you.
Yeah.